When you think of happiness, what comes to mind? A warm and cozy home where you feel safe and understood, a fulfilling career that gives you a sense of purpose, laughter shared with close friends late into the night, or perhaps the freedom of endless vacations and a life untouched by stress or worry. For many people, happiness is imagined as a destination, something we arrive at once the right conditions are met. For centuries, humanity has searched relentlessly for this elusive state, chasing it through wealth, success, pleasure, recognition, and comfort. Entire industries are built around the promise of happiness, selling us the idea that joy can be bought, earned, or achieved if we just try hard enough. But what if the answer to lasting happiness has been quietly present all along, written down thousands of years ago, hidden in plain sight within one of the most widely read and influential books in history? Today, we take a deeper journey into what the Bible really says about happiness, and the discovery may challenge nearly everything we assume about what it means to live a joyful life. In modern culture, happiness is often understood as an emotional high. It is the rush of excitement when something goes our way, the comfort of security when things feel stable, or the pleasure of indulgence when we treat ourselves. These moments are real and meaningful, but they are also temporary. They come and go, dependent on circumstances that are often beyond our control. The Bible, however, presents a concept of happiness that is far more enduring and profound. It does not deny emotion, pleasure, or enjoyment, but it places them within a larger framework. Happiness, from a biblical perspective, is less about fleeting feelings and more about the condition of the heart, the direction of one's life, and the alignment of the soul with truth, purpose, and love. It is not merely about feeling good, it is about living well. This distinction alone has the power to change how we approach life. Instead of constantly asking, "Does this make me happy right now?" the biblical approach invites a deeper question: does this lead me toward a life that is meaningful, grounded, and whole? This shift challenges our everyday assumptions. It suggests that happiness is not something we chase after external achievements, but something that grows within us as we learn how to live in harmony with values that transcend momentary pleasure. Many people misunderstand the Bible as promising a life of ease, comfort, or uninterrupted success to those who follow its teachings. When hardship appears, it can feel like a contradiction. Yet the scriptures themselves never hide the reality of struggle. In fact, they are filled with stories of people who face loss, uncertainty, injustice, and deep emotional pain. What makes these stories remarkable is not the absence of difficulty, but the presence of a resilient joy that endures through it. Happiness in the Bible often appears in unexpected places, not in luxury or abundance, but in humility, trust, perseverance, and love. Consider the words often referred to as the Beatitudes, where blessings are pronounced on the poor in spirit, those who mourn, the meek, and those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. At first glance, these conditions hardly resemble what modern society associates with happiness. Poverty of spirit, grief, gentleness, and longing sound more like burdens than blessings. Yet within these statements lies a profound paradox. They suggest that happiness is not the absence of pain or struggle, but the presence of meaning, hope, and connection even within those experiences. When life strips away illusions of control and self-sufficiency, it creates space for a deeper kind of joy to take root. This perspective reframes suffering itself. Rather than seeing hardship as the enemy of happiness, the Bible often presents it as a context in which joy can be refined and strengthened. This does not mean glorifying pain or denying sorrow. Instead, it acknowledges that life's most difficult moments often shape our character, deepen our empathy, and clarify what truly matters. Happiness, in this sense, becomes less fragile. It is no longer dependent on perfect circumstances, but grounded in a sense of purpose that can withstand life's unpredictability. Another striking theme throughout Scripture is the connection between righteousness and joy. Happiness is frequently linked with living rightly, walking in integrity, and aligning one's actions with moral and spiritual principles. This is not presented as a simplistic transaction where good behavior automatically results in rewards. Rather, it reflects the idea that a life lived in harmony with truth naturally produces a sense of peace and fulfillment. When our actions align with our values, when our inner convictions match our outward behavior, There is a deep satisfaction that cannot be replicated by external success alone. Wisdom, understanding, and truth are often described as sources of delight. The joy that comes from learning, growing, and becoming more compassionate is emphasized repeatedly. This kind of happiness is not self-centered. It expands outward. It encourages investment in relationships, communities, and causes that contribute to the well-being of others. When life is measured not by what we accumulate, but by how we love and serve, happiness takes on a richer and more enduring form. One of the most challenging and counterintuitive aspects of the Bible's teaching on happiness is its approach to trials. Rather than promising a life free from pain, Scripture openly acknowledges suffering as an unavoidable part of the human experience. Yet it also speaks of joy that exists alongside sorrow, not as denial, but as depth. This joy comes from perspective. It is rooted in the belief that life has meaning beyond immediate circumstances, that struggles are not wasted, and that growth often emerges from difficulty. Rejoicing in trials, a phrase found in Scripture, can sound almost offensive when taken at face value. It is not an invitation to celebrate pain or ignore injustice. Instead, it is an invitation to recognize that even in hardship, there can be purpose, learning, and transformation. There is a quiet strength in realizing that adversity does not define our worth or determine our future. This realization fosters a kind of happiness that is steady rather than reactive, resilient rather than fragile. Gratitude plays a central role in this vision of happiness. In a world that constantly encourages dissatisfaction by highlighting what we lack, the Bible consistently points toward thankfulness as a pathway to joy. Gratitude shifts our attention from scarcity to abundance, from what is missing to what is present. It trains the heart to recognize goodness even in imperfect circumstances. This practice is not naive optimism. It is a deliberate choice to acknowledge grace, provision, and beauty wherever they appear. Interestingly, modern psychology often echoes this ancient wisdom. Studies show that gratitude improves mental health, strengthens relationships, and increases overall well-being. What Scripture has long suggested that thankfulness transforms the heart is now being affirmed by scientific research. Happiness, from this perspective, becomes something we cultivate daily through awareness and intention, rather than something we wait for passively. Community and connection are also essential to the Bible's understanding of happiness. Joy is rarely portrayed as a solitary experience. Instead, it is woven into relationships, shared experiences, and collective responsibility. Caring for others, bearing one another's burdens, and celebrating together are presented as sources of deep fulfillment. This challenges the modern emphasis on individual achievement and self-sufficiency. The biblical vision suggests that happiness grows when we move beyond ourselves. Acts of kindness, generosity, and service are not depicted as losses, but as investments in a richer life. When we contribute to the well-being of others, we often discover a sense of meaning that possessions and personal accomplishments cannot provide. This outward-focused happiness does not diminish individuality. It enriches it by connecting us to something larger than our own desires. Contentment is another theme that quietly but powerfully shapes the Bible's teaching on happiness. Contentment is not resignation or apathy. It is the ability to find peace in the present moment while still striving for growth and improvement. It reflects an understanding that our worth is not determined by comparison, status, or constant achievement. Contentment allows happiness to exist even when life is incomplete or imperfect. This balance between acceptance and aspiration is striking. It acknowledges that life is a journey, not a finished product. Happiness, then, is not postponed until everything is ideal. It is experienced along the way, in the midst of progress, struggle, and learning. This perspective frees us from the exhausting cycle of always chasing the next thing, the next milestone, the next version of ourselves. Material wealth appears throughout Scripture, but it is rarely portrayed as a reliable source of happiness. In fact, there are frequent warnings about the dangers of attachment to possessions. Wealth can create comfort, but it can also distract, isolate, and foster a false sense of security. The Bible consistently emphasizes that true happiness lies in spiritual richness, moral clarity, and meaningful relationships rather than in accumulation. In a consumer-driven culture, this message feels both radical and refreshing. It challenges the assumption that more is always better and invites a simpler, more intentional way of living. By focusing on what truly matters, love, integrity, purpose, and connection, happiness becomes less about what we own and more about who we are becoming. So how do we actually experience this kind of happiness in daily life? The answer is both simple and profound. It begins with perspective. It involves recognizing that happiness is not a reward we earn or a destination we reach, but a way of engaging with life. It grows through daily choices, attitudes, and actions. It is nurtured by gratitude, strengthened by resilience, and sustained by purpose. This happiness invites us to find joy in the present moment, even when the present is messy or uncertain. It encourages alignment between values and actions, deep investment in relationships, and trust in something greater than ourselves. Far from being selfish, this pursuit of happiness becomes a gift to others. A joyful life tends to overflow, bringing encouragement, kindness, and hope to those around us. In practical terms, this means noticing small moments of beauty, celebrating quiet victories, and appreciating the rhythms of everyday life. It means choosing empathy over indifference, patience over frustration, and generosity over self-interest. It means embracing contentment without losing the desire to grow, and perseverance without losing compassion. Perhaps the most surprising truth is that the happiness described in the Bible is not reserved for the extraordinary, the wealthy, or the spiritually elite. It is accessible in ordinary moments, in everyday decisions, and in simple acts of trust and love. It appears when we pause to appreciate what we already have, when we serve others without expecting recognition, and when we find courage in the face of adversity. This happiness is quiet rather than loud, steady rather than dramatic, and enduring rather than fleeting. It does not depend on perfect circumstances or constant success. Instead, it transforms the way we experience life itself. It teaches us that happiness is not something we stumble upon by chance, but something we live intentionally day by day. In the end, the Bible's message about happiness is both timeless and deeply relevant. It reminds us that joy is not found in endless striving, but in meaningful living. It invites us to stop chasing happiness as an object and start embodying it as a way of being. Happiness, it suggests, is not something we find outside ourselves. It is something that grows within us when we choose gratitude over greed, connection over isolation, and purpose over pleasure. If this reflection has offered you a new perspective on happiness or encouraged you to reconsider what truly matters in your own life, take a moment to sit with that insight. Happiness may not arrive in a dramatic moment or a perfect season. It often appears quietly in the ordinary spaces where trust, love, and gratitude meet. And perhaps that is the greatest wisdom of all. Happiness is not a destination. It is a journey, lived one intentional step at a time, toward a life that is not just lived, but deeply and enduringly joyful.